Magnetic fishing treasures. An Australian man who was partaking in the trend of magnet fishing made an amazing discovery. Magnet fishing is an easy hobby to take up, which could be why it seems to be the newest popular thing to do, with hundreds of videos surfacing of people casting their ropes into the water with a magnet attached to the end. For the self-proclaimed Bondi treasure hunter, he got something more impressive than most. He ended up finding almost 50 safes buried in the riverbed of an Amsterdam canal. Lee Weber was out with his friends when his magnet attached itself to a massive safe. Weber finally freed it and broke it open. At first, Weber was disappointed to find a bunch of plastic sleeves, but he quickly changed his tune when he realized the sleeves were holding a hoard of valuable collector's coins. When Weber took a closer look at the coins, he spotted a clue to their origin, an inscription that read, Hortus Botanicus, 1682 to 1982, Amsterdam. A quick call to the botanical gardens in Amsterdam, and Weber found out that a safe had been stolen from the attraction 15 to 20 years earlier, when 500 coins were made to commemorate the 300-year anniversary of the botanical gardens. Although some people might be a little disappointed that the coins were only minted in the 1980s, the theft of the safe and the location of the discovery add to their story, making the entire expedition something of a success. At the very least, it gives the magnetic fisherman the drive he needs to get back out there and find something even more valuable.
Mordovia Pagan Treasure Trove. Deep in the forests of Mordovia, in the Ruzayevsky district of northwestern Russia, lies the burial sites of 400 Mordovian pagans. Dating back to the 18th century, 600 skeleton remains, hundreds of ceremonial costumes, coins, and jewelry were found by the Russian excavation team by the name of Expedition. It is the largest find in the area, with a known excavation site of 32,615 square feet, which opened it up to wannabe treasure hunters attempting to sneak onto the site, hoping they can take a piece for themselves. The excavation team had to resort to hiring round-the-clock security, as they could only unearth so much at once, and locals were coming daily to take a look at the immense excavation site. The site was considered to be a Kalmalayai, or river cemetery, translated from the original Mokshan language. It has proven to be a fascinating look into how the pre-Christian/Russian pagans performed their burials. They were buried together in an almost embrace, with the position of one woman's remains laying her hand on a man's chest, showing a view into their beliefs about the afterlife. Besides the cultural treasures of the centuries-old burial site, the excavation team was also able to uncover women's brooches, glass beads, and rings. Furthermore, in the findings were men's belt buckles, knives, ancient screws and fasteners, and even full armchairs. While this site might not be the classic pirate's chest full of gold, the cultural treasure that this site provides is beyond any level of measurable wealth. North Carolina Shipwreck. The SS North Carolina was a steamship that sank off the South Carolina coast over 180 years ago, in the summer of 1840, after it collided with its sister ship, the Governor Dudley. Thankfully, everyone on board survived, but the ship's cargo, including a trove of rare gold coins, were lost. The currency alone is estimated to be worth tens of millions of dollars in today's money. The hoard is thought to include coins from the U.S. Mint in Dahlonega, Georgia, which opened just 2 years before the wreck, according to a statement from Blue Water Ventures International and Endurance Exploration Group, who are working together to recover the artifacts. Divers commissioned by the companies found some gold coins, marble objects, dinnerware, and brass spikes that were used to build the ship. This wasn't the first time someone tried to salvage the North Carolina's treasure, but doing so is easier said than done, with low visibility in the murky water and the tendency for sharks to congregate in the area. On top of that, many of the treasures are buried beneath at least 3 feet of sand, and digging them up would require expensive machinery. Nevertheless, people continue to try in hopes of getting their hands on some of the gold coins or luxury jewelry left behind by passengers.
English Coin Hoard. When a former police officer in England unearthed 10 gold coins from the 6th century, he never expected it would land him in jail, but that's just what happened to Officer David Cockle, who used nothing more than a metal detector to locate coins. But it wasn't his amateur sleuthing that got him in trouble. It was his greed that got him a prison sentence. The coins were part of the largest Anglo-Saxon treasure hoard ever discovered in an English field, most of which were found by an anonymous amateur metal detectorist. When Cockle found the coins, he kept them a secret, later illegally selling them for 15,000 British pounds, about $20,000. In the UK, it's illegal to resell 2 or more coins that are at least 300 years old and have more than 10% gold or silver. The government considers that a treasure, and since Cockle's coins were just a fraction of a larger cachet of 131 gold coins found, the officer was sentenced to 16 months behind bars. Only 8 of the 10 coins he sold have been found. It took over 6 years for the remaining coins to be unearthed. Most are 85 to 90% gold Frankish tremisses, which are small coins from the 6th century. 9 of the coins are larger Byzantine currency, each with 3 times the value of the tremisses. In the cachet, a pendant, gold bar, and 2 other gold jewelry pieces were also unearthed. Experts think they were buried sometime around 600 AD, before England unified. When experts unearthed the remaining coins, they noticed the cachet had been previously disturbed, leading them to believe that the hoard had been moved or the other coins had been removed from it at some point in history. With such a large quantity of almost pure gold coins, it's most likely that the hoard will be given to the British Crown under the 1996 Treasure Act and placed in the Norwich Castle Museum. This important find isn't just a dazzling display of wealth, it shows how the early Anglo-Saxon economy worked. Sadly for David Cockle, he also got a lesson in how the justice system works too. Did you know there were laws in place that require surrendering found treasure? Do you think they're fair? Tell us your thoughts on this in the comments.
900-year-old sword. Some people say that Israel is home to an entire universe of treasures, both ethereal and worldly. For one lucky scuba diver by the name of Shlomi Katzin, he discovered an underwater site full of ruins, ancient pottery, and a 3-foot-long broadsword dating back to the 11th to 13th century. After swift undercurrents moved enough sand and material away, the marine creature-covered handle, hilt, and blade were clearly visible. Now, normally, scuba divers never touch artifacts so as to not disturb the dive site or what might be lurking underneath. However, Katzin knew this rare treasure might be covered again, so he broke the diver's code and contacted the Israel Antiquities Authority, or IAA. During the 11th and 13th century, several European powers sent Crusader knights to Israel with the stated goal of freeing the Holy Lands from Muslim authority and used the Carmel coast as the main launching point for multiple sea-based campaigns. According to the IAA, the sword most definitely belonged to a crusading knight, and they had even found other treasures at the same search site before. However, due to the ever-changing conditions on the Carmel coast, it's hard to discover what else the natural ship shelter is hiding under the waves. Roman-era horde. During a recent family vacation to the Spanish coastal town of Xabia, brothers-in-law Luis Lenz Pardo and Cesar Jimeno Alcala decided to go snorkeling. Their original goal was to clean up trash, but plans changed when one of the men noticed something glimmering on the Mediterranean seafloor. He went to investigate and discovered that it was a shiny coin. After dusting it off, he saw that it featured an ancient Greek or Roman-like face. The coin was in a small hole, and the pair suspected that there were more where it came from. They returned with a Swiss Army knife and found 7 more coins. Lenz Pardo and Jimeno Alcala reported the discovery to local authorities, who dispatched a team of archaeologists to the site. They found 53 gold coins dating between 364 and 408 AD, when the Western Roman Empire was in decline. The coins are extremely well preserved, bearing identifiable images of the Roman emperors Valentinian I, Valentinian II, Theodosius I, Arcadius, and Honorius. There's only one coin with an unidentifiable portrait. It's one of the largest Roman coin hoards ever found in Europe, and it's especially valuable because it could help to shed light on the circumstances surrounding the empire's final days. Researcher Jaime Molina Vidal told Live Science that the discovery reflects the type of fear someone might have when burying their treasure hoard to hide it from invaders. No nearby shipwrecks have been found, further pointing toward the possibility that someone went out of their way to conceal their hoard.
Lockdown treasure hunting boom. As more and more people have to deal with the endless lockdowns during the pandemic, they've kept themselves entertained with new hobbies and pastimes. For families in the UK, they've done more than take up baking bread and learning a new sport. Instead, they've started treasure hunting in droves, and as it turns out, some residents are pretty good at it. Since the start of the pandemic, these amateur archaeologists have kept the tradition of treasure hunting alive, and in return, they've been handsomely rewarded with thousands of antiquities. A whopping 47,000 discoveries have been made, including hordes of coins and a medieval seal matrix used by a bishop to leave his mark in wax seals on letters. As experts took a closer look at the seal, they found that it showed the bishop standing in his vestments with the inscription, "David, God's Messenger, Bishop of St. Andrews." They also realized that because the seal was made with lead alloy, it was probably a contemporary forgery used to authenticate copied documents. As amazing as these finds are, hobbyists aren't keeping them to themselves. They're using modern technology to share the news of their incredible finds by updating a database that tracks all antiquities for professional curators. A lot of interesting artifacts have been unearthed over the past 2 years by budding sleuths. A copper alloy Roman furniture fitting dating from circa AD 43 to 200, featuring the face of the god Oceanus, was located. It has stunning, intricate seaweed fronds that frame the god's face, as well as tiny dolphins and serpentine creatures on Oceanus' temples. 50 gold coins from South Africa, minted in the 1970s during the apartheid era, were found buried north of London, and another cache of 63 gold coins from the 16th century, featuring King Henry VIII, were also found in the New Forest area. When a local resident was weeding their garden, they are extremely rare and feature the initials of the king's wives, Catherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn, and Jane Seymour. The number of coins is much more than the average wage during the Tudor period, so it will take some time to figure out if the hoard was someone's savings added to over time, or if they were buried all at once. Over 10,000 more discoveries than those made in 2019 have been recorded, which has kept the British Museum busy. Anytime someone finds an object that's more than 300 years old, the rule is they have to report it to the local authorities, who assess the item. If it's of value, it goes to the British Museum to be surveyed and preserved. But that doesn't mean the person who found it walks away empty-handed. They're paid for their discovery. Not bad for a day spent digging in the garden. Have you ever found anything valuable with a metal detector? Share your experiences in the comment section. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss any of our future videos.
$17 billion shipwreck. For the vast majority of us, we all wanted to be swashbuckling pirates at one point or another, finding buried treasure or looting Spanish galleons for all they're worth. For the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution and their underwater robot, they got to live that dream with the finding of the San Jose off the coast of Colombia in November of 2015. The San Jose was an impressive 62-gun, 3-masted galleon, holding a cargo worth roughly $17 billion US. It was sunk by the British ships during the Spanish War of Succession in June of 1708, taking its 600 souls aboard down with it. Most experts agree that with its treasure of gold, silver, and emeralds, it is the most valuable shipwreck ever found. The wreck was found at a depth of over 1,968.5 feet by using the latest sonar imaging technology for 2015. It wasn't until the research team piloting the underwater drone was able to get clear images of its dolphin-engraved cannons that they were able to confirm the ship's identity. Due to the wreck's immense treasure aboard, the Colombian government has been keeping the exact location of the ship a closely guarded state secret, but that hasn't stopped the legal battles from waging on who exactly is the rightful owner of the fortune. from the Colombian government to several other countries, and even pirate salvage companies, the most intense game of finders keepers is only just beginning. Battersea Shield. While excavating at the Thames River in London, ahead of the construction of the Chelsea Bridge in 1857, workers dredged up an ancient bronze shield. It consists of several different pieces being held together by rivets. It is decorated in the style of the Celtic Latin culture. Back when it was being used, it would have functioned as a covering for a wooden shield. Known as the Battersea Shield, it's widely considered one of the most significant pieces of Celtic art ever found in Britain. But its origins are largely a mystery. For one, nobody can say with certainty when the shield was made or used. The Museum of London, which houses the artifact, dated it to sometime between 350 and 50 BC. But some experts have speculated that it may have been made during the early 1st century AD. The workers who discovered the Battersea Shield also found skeletons and large amounts of Roman and Celtic weapons. This led some historians to conclude that the shield was left behind during Julius Caesar's invasion of Britain in 54 BC. But most modern scholars challenge this view. The bronze plating that the shield is made with is too thin to have protected someone during combat, and it bears no signs of battle-related damage, so it's likely that the Battersea Shield was made as a status symbol or a parade piece and deposited into the river as a religious offering.
Viking Sword. 2 metal detectors on the Isle of Man uncovered a stunning rare Viking sword in the northwest area of the island. Somehow it survived for over 1,000 years in the soil until the 2 men located the fragments, including an intricately decorated hilt or handle, and a pommel or weight on the top of the hilt that was carved to look like a set of knuckles. It is the first Manx Viking sword of its kind discovered on the island that sits in the Irish Sea and has a storied history of Viking occupation that dates back to the early 800s. The Manx are an ethnic group whose language descends from Middle Irish. They originated on the island and share significant Norse and English influences. Over 4 centuries, Vikings spent time there, at first trading and then constructing more permanent settlements. Over time, other Viking-era artifacts have been uncovered on the Isle of Man, like fishing hooks, needles, and hoards of silver. But this was the first set of highly decorated sword parts found there, with experts believing they date back to 900 AD. As archaeologists cleaned and studied the sword, some wondered if it could have belonged to a male Viking, whose grave had been located buried in a ship on the island. In Viking custom, their warriors are buried with everything they needed in the afterlife, but this particular man didn't have a sword. Even though only some parts of the sword were uncovered, experts had the most important part. They were able to tell from the decoration on the hilt that it probably came from Norway, and that it was made from copper alloy. For those who want to own a piece of history, the sword fragments aren't up for grabs, as they are put on display at the Viking and Medieval Gallery.
The Amber Room Treasure. The Amber Room was said to be one of the 8 wonders of the world when it was constructed in 1716 for the Berlin City Palace by German designer Andreas Schluter and Danish amber craftsman Gottfried Wolfram. The room itself is crafted entirely of amber, gold, gemstones, and highly polished mirrors, and while considered to be priceless, its material cost was in the range of $142 million to $500 million US. After its construction, it was moved a number of times before finding a home in the Catherine Palace in modern-day Pushkin, just outside of St. Petersburg in 1755. Fast forward to World War II and the Nazis are pushing into the Soviet bloc. They not only found the Amber Room, but also went about removing it and sending it to Königsberg to be put on display. During the Soviet counterattack, Hitler had the German army attempt to send the treasure home to Berlin via a steamer ship called the Karlsruhe. The Soviet Air Force ended up sinking the ship because if Stalin couldn't have the Amber Room, then no one could. It was said to be lost forever. That is, until in October of 2020, Polish divers from the Baltic Tech Group found what they believed to be the wreckage of the Karlsruhe. The wreck the Baltic Tech Group found was at the bottom of the Baltic Sea, the same sea it was sunk in, and was loaded up with Nazi military vehicles, porcelain, and crates full of unknown contents. Documentation from the time provides us with more evidence, as the ship was loaded with a large cargo and left Königsberg in a hurry. The Polish dive team seems convinced that they solved the mystery of the Amber Room. What do you think? Let us know in the comments if they found the remnants of the Amber Room or just another Nazi warship. And if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Head of Hadrien. The Roman Emperor Hadrien is perhaps best known for building an 80-mile-long wall across Britain to separate the so-called barbarians from the Romans. Over 2 centuries ago, a bronze head depicting Hadrien was pulled from the River Thames in the heart of Roman Britain, which is now London. It was likely once attached to a full-body statue of the emperor that probably stood in a public forum. The statue would have been 1 1/4 times life-sized according to the British Museum. Hadrien was known for traveling extensively throughout Europe. It was common for cities to rebuild and beautify as a result of these imperial visits, so it makes sense that people would erect a statue to commemorate the ruler. There are plenty of surviving marble sculptures of Hadrien, but there aren't many bronze examples, making the head of Hadrien both rare and mysterious.
13-year-old discovers hordes. Sometimes it pays to hang out with your parents, even if you think they're not cool. When a 13-year-old decided to tag along with her dad's metal detectorist group to South Cambridgeshire in England, she had a bit of beginner's luck when she uncovered a Bronze Age horde. Among the massive cache of 200 items, she found axe heads, blade fragments, and other copper alloy parts that experts now think date back to around 1300 BC. At first, Millie Hardwick, her father, and grandfather didn't have much luck with their exploration. But after a quick lunch break, they decided to try a different part of the field. When Millie's metal detector went off, her father dug around in the dirt. When he unearthed a solid object that he joked could be part of an axe, the group didn't expect that he was spot on. They continued to dig, finding more axe parts and a silver coin. The dig was then immediately halted and covered until the next day, when a team of professional archaeologists visited the site. After examining the dig site, they confirmed the discovery, as well as a second horde located nearby by another group on the initial trip. The discoveries are being studied to confirm if they are related or just happen to be buried near one another. Either way, the items were sent to the British Museum so they can study them and determine their value. If they are declared a treasure, the landowner and Millie will split a reward. Until then, the young girl and her father continue to head out on the weekend excursions in the hopes of finding even more buried treasures.
The Farmer Vikings Treasure Trove. One could argue the life of a farmer is difficult at best, but a small farmer's life didn't get any easier after 2 treasure hunters found over $15.4 million in Viking coins outside Leicester in central England in 2015. 38-year-old George Powell and 51-year-old Leighton Davis found the coins on the land of Lord Colley and were known members of the English Metal Detecting Society. Normally this would be a great find that could rewrite English history, as the coins were from the 5th or 6th century and featured 2 very important faces: King Alfred the Great of Wessex and his contemporary, Ceolwulf II of Mercia. They were supposedly 2 rulers of the same land, implying that the 2 kingdoms had some kind of allegiance, and might disprove the later texts that showed Ceolwulf as merely a pawn for the Vikings. However, both Powell and Davis have been charged and convicted of theft and concealment of antiquities under British law. While in the ocean it's more or less finders keepers, on British soil any treasure hunters are required to report their findings of anything ancient or of value to the government within 2 weeks of the discovery. The government will still pay market price, and the landowner and finder may have to split the value. Powell and Davis didn't exactly do that. They sold several of the coins quietly on the black market. The pair got 10 and 8.5 years in prison, respectively. Out of the hundreds of coins found, only 31 pieces were retrieved. Riverware Horde. A pair of British divers named Gary and Trevor Bankhead have made hundreds of dives at historical sites around the world. While working under a contract with the British government in 2007, they uncovered a trove of gold and silver treasures from the River Wear outside Durham Castle. The 32 objects, which were once owned by the Queen, the Pope, and other leaders, included goblets, medals, crucifixes, and more. They date back to different periods, including the medieval, Saxon, and Roman eras. The Bankhead brothers also found a solid gold Japanese coin, marking the 60th renovation of the Grand Shrine of Ise, the country's most important Shinto temple. But what was it doing in England? Well, the explanation is surprisingly simple. The 24-carat piece belonged to Archbishop of Canterbury, Michael Ramsay, who received it during a 1973 trip to Japan. While visiting, he met Nikkyo Niwano, the president of the country's Buddhist movement. The coin is worth around $16,500 in today's money. Altogether, the divers uncovered hundreds of treasures known as the Riverware Horde. At least 30 belonged to Ramsay. In addition to the Japanese coin, Ramsay's items included a silver trowel from India, an 18-karat gold medallion, and a 19th century Russian icon. Among the other objects, there was a brothel token featuring a woman's legs. It was the first of its kind ever found in the UK. The collection also included a 13th century seal and a brooch depicting Queen Elizabeth and Sir Walter Raleigh, a historically famous statesman and explorer. Nobody knows how Ramsay's belongings ended up in the river. One theory holds that he threw them in there as a gift to the locals sometime after his retirement to Durham in 1974 and before his death in 1988.
The Galloway Horde. Leave it to the amateurs when it comes to locating hidden treasures. A collection of more than 100 stunning artifacts was unearthed in Scotland in 2014 by a treasure hunter, and experts at the National Museum Scotland describe it as the richest collection of rare, unique objects from the Viking era ever found in Britain and Ireland. It took 6 years to clean off all the dirt, mud, and debris from the objects, but as archaeologists did, they revealed breathtaking pieces, including silver armorings, silver bullion, and a rare, intricately decorated cross. Multiple layers of objects were found in the hoard, with ornate silver jewelry and a silver jar filled with beads, brooches, and bracelets among the finds. Before experts could get a close look at the delicate items, they decided to use special 3D imaging to examine the jar to keep the items safe. But they were able to tell that the wool that had wrapped around the vessel to protect the contents dated to around 680 and 780 AD. Experts were also able to tell that 4 different people or groups buried the hoard around 900 AD, adding more mystery to their understanding of Scotland in the age of the Vikings. The silver vessel holding the bulk of the jewelry had decorations featuring leopards and tigers that suggest it was made in Central Asia. But why were the items separated into multiple layers instead of all being buried together? Researchers think it was part of a decoy strategy, with the richer treasures being buried under those that weren't as valuable. As conservationists work to preserve the items, researchers continue to search for clues about the origins of the items, which will be put on display at the National Museum of Scotland.
Pablo's old stash money. In Colombia, no one had more money than the king of cocaine himself, Pablo Escobar. According to Forbes, Escobar was the 7th richest person on the planet, and while his exact net worth is unknown, it was rumored that he spent over $20,000 on rubber bands alone just so he can bundle all of his cash. During the end of his career and life, he was forced into hiding while he waged war against the Colombian state to avoid being sent to prison in the US. Unlike his time spent in Colombian prison, he couldn't play by his own rules in the US prison system. That thought would make any man with that amount of power and wealth do just about anything to avoid capture. During his 2-year run from the law, he stashed several apartments and safe houses in Medellin, Colombia, with millions of dollars in cash, as a criminal billionaire does. While most of that money has gone untouched, one of Escobar's nephews living in one of these old safe houses found around $18 million in September of 2020. Nicolas Escobar claims that a vision helped him find the hidden wall containing the $18 million in cash, as well as an old pen, satellite phones, a typewriter, and an undeveloped roll of film. Unfortunately for Nicholas, some of the money was damaged and considered unusable, but only time will tell what was on the undeveloped film roll, and perhaps more clues to even more untold treasures.
Long-lost beer ingredients. Treasure comes in many forms, depending on what's important to the person looking for it. For amateur diver and explorer Steve Hickman, that treasure was beer. Back in the 1980s, he encountered a sunken ship called the Wallachia off the Scottish coast. The Wallachia sank on a foggy day in 1895 after colliding with another vessel. It had just left Glasgow and was laden with cargo, including thousands of bottles of different kinds of alcoholic beverages. The cold water that the ship sank in helped to preserve the booze while it sat for over 100 years on the seafloor. After stumbling upon the wreck, Hickman began diving down there periodically to retrieve whiskey, gin, and beer. Over the years, he collected dozens of bottles. Earlier this year, a team accompanied Hickman on one of his dives down to the Wallachia. They handed their bottles from the trip over to scientists at Brewlab, a research firm that specializes in beer quality. The experts found live yeast in 3 bottles of beer, and they tried to recreate the original beer with it. In the process, they discovered that the beer contained a long-lost strain of yeast that is no longer used today. They're currently looking into whether it could be useful for, or perhaps even improve, modern brewing.
Rare Roman treasures in the UK. One of the best things to come out of the metal detectorist craze is how amateur treasure hunters are helping professional archaeologists locate hidden objects. When a hoard of items was found in 2002 in the UK, it brought experts to the area in search of other undiscovered caches. Even though it seems like finds like this happen every day, it's extremely rare. So imagine the surprise when another hoard of rare Roman items was found near the first. Artifacts that range from the Roman, Bronze, and Iron Ages were discovered at what experts think was the site of a Roman settlement that was once home to up to 300 people. Among the priceless items included a silver Roman figurine, coins, and other treasures. Pottery, oyster shells, and animal bones that were buried to mark funerals or feasts were also unearthed. At another nearby dig site, 3 jugs and a bronze dish were located, along with mosaic glass dishes made in Alexandria, Egypt, around AD 200, and the handle from a bronze jug. To the average person, bones and pottery might not seem significant, but they tell us as much of a story as gold and silver artifacts do. They show the way of life in ancient times, and also help to paint a picture of how cultures lived and who they traded with.
Treasure Island. Seeming to have come out of a dollar store graphic novel, Crusoe Island should get the nickname Treasure Island after 800 barrels of loot in Incan gold coins and jewels were found. Most people haven't heard of Crusoe Island until 2005, when the announcement of the treasure by Wagner, the Chilean company leading the search, set off an ownership war between the treasure hunters and the Chilean government. It is said that the treasure is worth over $10 billion US. However, since its burial in 1715 by Spanish sailor Juan Esteban Ubilla y Echeverria, there have been centuries of claims of finding the long-lost treasure, with every single one turning up empty. Except in the case of the Wagner team, they actually have some level of credibility to their claim. What makes this one different is that a mini robot dubbed Arthur Tito was brought to the island to scan the proposed burial site. Arthur Tito was originally a crime-solving master scanner with a scanning range of 150 feet. Arthur Tito has reportedly pinpointed the location to an artificial tunnel under a thick slab of volcanic rock. There is a small hitch in the team's plan. The island is now a protected conservation area, and digging there in the manner that the Wagner team wants to proceed could be illegal according to the Chilean government. While the treasure hunters know where the treasure most likely is, they can't quite break out the shovels and pickaxes just yet.
HMS Pandora Wreck. The British Royal Navy ship HMS Pandora was launched in 1779. It became famous for hunting down and capturing 14 mutineers in the South Pacific, who had seized control of another British Royal Navy vessel, the HMS Bounty. Shortly into the return voyage to Europe in 1791, the Pandora ran aground on the outer Great Barrier Reef. It sank the next morning, killing 31 crew members and 4 of the mutineers. Colonial authorities in New South Wales, Australia didn't bother trying to salvage the wreck. A trio of explorers discovered the sunken ship in 1977, and it quickly became known as one of the most significant shipwrecks in the Southern Hemisphere. The Queensland Museum carried out several excavations of the Pandora between 1983 and 1999. The team found skeletal remains of crew members, fancy shoe buckles, buttons, wax seals, and a one-of-a-kind 18th century stamp belonging to the ship's first lieutenant, John Larkin. They managed to dig up a portion of the wreck, but much of the vessel remains buried in what marine archaeologist Peter Gesner described as a marine Pompeii. Raising the Pandora would be a time-consuming and costly endeavor. The price of recovering the copper-sheathed hull alone was estimated at around $60 million in 1998, and it would undoubtedly cost a lot more now. So it's unlikely that the wreck will ever be brought to the surface, and it's unknown whether there are plans to continue excavating it.
Israeli Goonies. Working for a volunteer program with your friends can be some of the most rewarding times of your young life. But it's quite rare that your volunteer work rewards you with literal gold. In August of 2022, 18-year-olds working on the construction of a community in Yavne, south of Tel Aviv, Israel, uncovered 425 gold coins from over 1,100 years ago. While finding any artifacts from this time in Israel is rare, these coins were especially rare as they coined the names of several rules throughout the region, and most importantly, the production date and location. While a number of empires were at war or engaged in some kind of conflict at the time of this jar's burial, one very important thing has been proven due to this jar. Through war, trade, or some other means, having coins from multiple empires in one location means the money kept flowing and gives more insight into the trade and economic functions of the region at the time of burial. Now, on a more personal level to the original owner of the jar, the hoard of coins was found in a jar sealed tight with a nail and buried in a nondescript location, implying a number of things. First, the original owner meant to hide the stash for later use. Secondly, the owner clearly thought they would be able to return to its location. However, what caused the original owner to not be able to return to their small fortune is a mystery lost to the sands of time. So maybe next time your friend offers you a chance to volunteer out in the desert, take him up on the offer. Never know what kind of things you'll uncover.
Ancient fruit. Long ago, before Alexander the Great founded Alexandria in 331 AD, the city of Thonis Heracleon was Egypt's largest port city, but a combination of earthquakes, tsunamis, and rising sea levels weakened the ancient metropolis. At the end of the 2nd century, the ground beneath Thonis Heracleon liquefied, plunging it into the sea. Marine archaeologists have been exploring the submerged site for years, and they continue to make new discoveries. They recently discovered an array of artifacts, including Greek pottery and 2,400-year-old wicker baskets filled with fruit. Near the city's entrance, the team found a Greek funerary area known as a tumulus. A lot of the site was burned, indicating that special ceremonies took place there. Archaeologist Frank Gaudio told CNN that the most recent evidence near the tumulus dated back to the 4th century BC, even though Thanatos Heraclean continued to thrive for hundreds of years after that. This is where the archaeologists found the wicker baskets, which they believe may have been left as an offering in what was once an underground room. This would help to explain the content, which include grape seeds and dome fruit from the African palm tree. These are just some of the discoveries that have been made at Thanatos Heraclean, and we're chipping away at the mysteries surrounding this ancient underwater city.
The Triergold Horde. We all know the Romans were one of the most powerful empires to ever exist. They amassed one of the biggest empires in terms of land, power, and of course, treasure. For one German construction worker in 1993, his life was changed when he found one of the biggest hidden Roman gold hoards ever found. 2,516 Roman gold coins were found in the dirt under the construction site of a new car park in Trier, a small town close to the border of Luxembourg. This caused a mini gold rush in the city as everyone with a touch of archaeological knowledge and a metal detector rushed to the site to see if they could unearth a piece of the action. It was reported later that a few of the treasure hunters paid for their after-work beers with one of the coins. The Horde was worth 700,000 euros and featured several coins that researchers considered rare. The coins held the faces of 40 Roman emperors or their relatives, from Emperor Nero to Marcus Aurelius. This fact proved to researchers that during times of war or disease, the rich and powerful that feared for their lives would deposit some of their riches to try and aid them should they need to run for their lives. The Triergold Horde shows that humans and their love for gold and fear of death has never really changed. If you like that video, considering liking and subscribing for more knowledge delivered straight to your notifications. What would you do if you found one of these mythic treasures? Let us know in the comments. As always, thank you for watching.